The wind howled like a wolf through the empty streets of Willow Creek, swirling snowflakes into chaotic patterns that blurred the faint glow of the depot lights. Inside the tiny station, I pressed my hands against the icy glass, trying to glimpse the horizon for any sign of the late train that never came. My coat, thick as it was, seemed barely enough against the biting December cold, and my boots were wet through from the slushy snow that had settled into every seam. My stomach knotted with the realization that I was alone, truly alone on Christmas Eve, miles from home and surrounded by strangers whose holiday plans were far beyond this desolate corner of the country. Every chime of the clock echoed in my ears, each second a cruel reminder of the isolation I had never felt so deeply. I had been so sure that this trip was going to be an adventure, a break from routine, a chance to see a city twinkling with lights and warmth. But now, trapped in a small, drafty depot with nothing but the hiss of the wind, I wondered if I had made the gravest mistake of my life. I hugged my knees closer to my chest and wrapped my scarf tighter, the fibers scratching against my cheek as I tried to focus on anything but the creeping fear. People had long gone home, leaving the station eerily quiet, the benches cold and uninviting. My phone's battery had died hours ago, so the world beyond these four walls was unreachable. I imagined my family sitting by the fire, laughing, exchanging gifts, while I shivered in solitude. My heart ached, a hollow, unrelenting pulse of regret and loneliness. And then, as if to mock my misery, the wind slammed the doors, rattling the windows violently, making me jump and clutch the bench as if it could somehow shield me. I tried to breathe slowly, telling myself it would be fine. The train sometimes ran late, that someone, anyone, might walk in before I froze into immobility. But the hours dragged on with a cruel, measured patience, and the depot felt more like a tomb with every passing minute. Then, in the shadowy corner of the platform, I saw him, a figure large and steady, approaching against the swirling snow, wearing a weathered hat and a coat that looked as though it had been built to defy the worst winters. His boots crunched over the frost, a sound that seemed impossibly comforting in the desolation. He carried himself with a calmness I envied, as if he belonged here, as if he had mastered the harshness of the night while I was simply surviving it. My pulse quickened despite my exhaustion. He reached the depot door and held it open with a gentle push, stepping inside and letting the warmth of the station lick at him like sunlight on frozen earth. And then he looked at me. Those eyes, clear, steady, and deeply knowing, met mine, and for a moment, the wind outside ceased to exist. I could not explain the sudden sense of safety, the way my frozen limbs seemed to thaw under his gaze. "Are you all right?" His voice was deep, calm, and soothing, carrying over the echoing stillness. He removed his hat, revealing tousled hair dusted with snow, and smiled faintly, as if he had been expecting me to be here all along. I opened my mouth, unsure if I should speak, unsure if words could bridge the gap between despair and hope. Finally, a whisper escaped me, trembling and hesitant. I'm stuck. The train. It hasn't come." He nodded, understanding more than I thought possible without explanation. Without a word, he reached into the pocket of his coat and offered a hand. "Come home with me," he said softly. The words were simple, but the promise in them was monumental, a lifeline thrown across the storm. My heart thudded wildly, torn between disbelief and longing, but the warmth radiating from his hand was enough to make me take it, to let the cold seep from my bones and be replaced with something wholly unexpected: hope. He guided me outside, and the snow swirled around us, but I no longer felt its bite. His presence was a shield, a sanctuary from the harshness of the world. As we walked, he told me stories of the land he called home, of horses that roamed wide pastures and fires that crackled with laughter on cold nights, of cabins nestled beneath towering pines where Christmas lights twinkled like stars. Each word painted a world I had never imagined, a world that promised warmth, safety, and even joy in the bleakest circumstances. I laughed despite myself when he recounted a mishap with a runaway calf that ended with him knee-deep in mud, chuckling at his own misfortune. The sound was music in my ears, a melody that seemed to dissolve the ache I had carried all night. And though we had just met, I felt a strange intimacy, as though the universe had conspired to bring us together in this frozen moment, this lonely station on the outskirts of nowhere. By the time we reached the edge of town, the sky had turned an inky velvet, dotted with stars that gleamed like the very Christmas lights I had yearned for. He stopped in front of a rustic wooden gate, dusted with snow, and gestured toward the house beyond it. Smoke curled from the chimney, a soft amber glow spilling from the windows. "This is home," he said simply. There was no pretense in his words, no hint of dramatics, just a straightforward truth that seemed to resonate in the marrow of my bones. I realized then that home wasn't just a place. Sometimes it was a feeling, a person who made the cold nights bearable and the lonely moments fleeting. I hesitated, my breath forming clouds in the crisp air, then let him take my hand again. And as we stepped into the warmth of the house, the scent of pine and wood smoke enveloping me, I felt the first real Christmas magic in years. The storm outside was still raging, but inside there was light, laughter, and the quiet, steady pulse of belonging. That night, I learned that sometimes the universe works in whispers, in subtle nudges that bring strangers together when they least expect it. I also learned that hope can arrive in the form of a man in a cowboy hat, a simple offer of warmth, a hand extended in genuine kindness. And as I sat by the fire, sipping hot cocoa he had made with a teasing smile, I knew that this Christmas, unlike any before, would be remembered not for the cold or the fear, but for the unexpected warmth of a heart willing to share its home, and perhaps its life. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button to follow along, I promise. The journey is only getting better from here, and you won't want to miss the next chapter. The first thing I noticed, upon waking, was the soft glow of morning light, spilling through frost-laced windows. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside coated in a thick, sparkling blanket of snow. I stretched and felt the unfamiliar but comforting sensation of warmth through my bones. I had never imagined waking on Christmas morning to the smell of pine and fresh bread, the air so pure it felt like I was breathing hope itself. The cowboy, whose name I had learned was Luke, was already bustling in the kitchen, humming an old country tune that somehow carried the essence of peace. When he noticed my eyes on him, he winked, a roguish, heart-stopping grin that made my chest flutter. "Morning," he said simply, as if the night's events had been the most natural thing in the world. I smiled back, still not quite able to believe that the woman who had frozen at a depot hours ago was now wrapped in warmth, laughter, and a sense of belonging I had never experienced before. Luke guided me outside to see the ranch in full winter glory. Snow blanketed the rolling hills, and the fences, heavy with frost, glistened under the morning sun. Horses in the pasture shook off the cold, stamping their hooves and flicking their tails, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air. I ran my fingers along the smooth mane of a chestnut mare, and she nickered softly, her warmth surprising against my cold cheeks. Luke chuckled at my wide-eyed wonder. "You'll find life on the ranch has its own rhythm," he said. "It's hard work, sure, but it's honest. And there's always room for people who are willing to stay." I laughed nervously, unsure if he was teasing or speaking some deeper truth, but I knew I wanted to find out. The way he looked at me, steady and sincere, made my heart ache with a longing I didn't even realize I carried until that moment. We spent the day preparing for Christmas with the small circle of his neighbors and family, baking bread, decorating the house, and chopping the last of the firewood. Each task was punctuated with gentle humor, playful teasing, and moments where our hands brushed, sending sparks that had nothing to do with the fire. I discovered that the warmth I felt wasn't just from the heat, it was from him, from the laughter, from the feeling of being exactly where I was meant to be. As the afternoon light faded into a deep velvet night, the ranch seemed to glow with a soft magic. Candles flickered in windows, casting long shadows, and outside, the snow crunched softly underfoot as families gathered, children's laughter echoing through the hills. I realized then that Christmas wasn't just about gifts or tradition. It was about connection, about finding someone who could turn a frozen night into a memory that would last a lifetime. Later, as the first stars appeared overhead, Luke and I sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, sipping hot cocoa and watching the world sparkle under a silver moon. He reached for my hand again, his thumb brushing lightly over my knuckles, a silent question lingering in his gaze. I didn't need words to answer. The night felt infinite, a perfect bubble of warmth and hope suspended above the cold earth. And then, in the quiet intimacy of snow and starlight, he leaned close and whispered, "I'm glad you came with me. You belong here with me." My chest tightened, emotions swirling in a tide too deep for words, and I realized that the lonely girl at the depot had been left behind, replaced by someone brave enough to step into the warmth of a new life. That Christmas night, I understood something profound. Miracles don't always arrive in thunder and lightning. Sometimes they arrive quietly, in the form of a cowboy with kind eyes, a simple invitation, and a heart willing to share its home. And as Luke pulled me close, the snow crunching under the horses, hooves and the wind whispering through the pines, I knew that this was only the beginning of our story. The cold night at the depot was a memory now, a prelude to a life I never could have imagined, full of love, warmth, and the quiet magic that only comes when someone shows you where you truly belong. If you loved this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll never miss another heartwarming tale of unexpected romance, hope, and life-changing moments. There's more magic ahead, and you won't want to miss a single chapter.